I spent first 5 years of my career in Dubai working across performance agencies. For Sell-Through, the idea is that firstly, we are positioning ourselves to be the region's first client-side agency. UAE is more mature when it comes to digital as compared to Saudi. And Saudi, as we all know, is the next big thing in terms of transformation.
Is this because you started off in this journey sooner? There is a larger talent pool available, people who have, let's say, come from different parts of the world to now bring slightly advanced practices. What's your lens on why is this the way it is?
Saudi is such an interesting market where you would get some business reaches out and you're like, okay, sure, let me Google this business. What do they do? You will find a website which is half baked. There is no alignment of UI, UX, checkout process is very cumbersome. And then you go check, they have like 800 stores. You're like, but what's going on, right?
We Indians take great pride in the dhandhas we run, the problems we solve at scale, the methods we employ to accomplish all of this. Whether as customers, partners, vendors, or even as middlemen facilitating these businesses and aiding their growth, we play a significant role. One such individual is Ankit Bansal, who runs a digital marketing agency called SellThru's out of Dubai. They're the pioneers in the region, bridging the gap between the understanding of customers and partners for their CRM, marketing automation, and SEO needs. Ankit shares a wealth of insights on the markets in the MEA region, whether discussing their maturity when they're going through digital transformation, the shift to apps from websites, or the adoption of MarTech. We cover it all. This is episode 39 of the State of Retention Marketing podcast. I am Ankur Gattani, your host. Tune in, but before that, hit that follow button so you never miss an episode from us. Thank you so much for doing this with us, Ankit.
Thank you, Ankur, for having me. I'm looking forward to our chat today.
Super cool. So, Ankit, just straight off the bat, tell us a little bit about your journey, how you ended up where you did, because I know there are a bunch of interesting bits there.
Cool. So for me, like I started off on the agency side. Before moving to Dubai almost 10 years ago, I was working for Accenture in Hyderabad. And fortunately, like I was part of a team in Accenture who was managing a product from Google called DoubleClick Search. And at the time, 10 years ago, there was a lack of talent of people who in the region who had experience of DoubleClick Search as a product. That fortunately gave me the opportunity to move to Dubai. And I spent first 5 years of my career in Dubai working across performance agencies. So got the chance to work on Emirates Airlines global paid search account, which was a great experience. It was an exclusive contract with the agency. So huge account. Then I moved on to Landmark Ecom, a great omni-channel plus social experience. And then I decided to move to the client side, where I worked for a startup pre-COVID, a luxury fashion marketplace called The List, and got exposed to a very interesting kind of business model, something similar to what Farfetch does. And then I moved in my last role at Sixth Street, which is a fast-moving fashion marketplace in the region, serving across 6 countries. And then for me, it's a full circle back to agency life, where recently I've moved full-time into the agency Sell-Through. I'm a co-founder, and I'm excited trying to form the region's first client-side agency.
Super cool. So what's very interesting is the switches between the worlds from the first agency side, then to the clients and back to the agency. What's the fundamental thesis why you thought it's a great idea to be doing this? It's a great opportunity. Is that where it's coming from?
Well, I've always been super involved in all different roles I've had in different companies where always been involved operationally. And I've always thought as a leader, it's important that when you're giving an advice to right from an intern to a manager to who's reporting into you, the advice should only be legit if you can do the same thing yourself, right? Like if you can just advise, but you don't know how to do this, there's no point. So that always kept me humbled in the way of like managing performance, managing CRM, managing SEO, where I could hold that level of conversations with the team, right? So, and that's what an agency is about in the true sense, where you're not giving advice, you can actually go out and execute your advice, right? So for me, moving that circle from agency and to client side was more of a factor of understanding the business side of things. Understanding as a marketing leader, not just marketing, but how marketing works with different functions within a business. How does it work with merchandising? How does it work with the customer success team, the last mile team, the delivery, the operations, all of that, right? And then steering marketing as a function based on the state of the business you are in. So for me, my role is in the startup, the list was very performance heavy, even though I was managing the entire digital, but being a startup, it was more focused towards performance. But in Sixth Street, we started off with performance, but then CRM took the main driving seat for the last 2 years of my role, right? So that exposure was something which I kind of realized that firstly, there is such knowledge is a big, like there's a big gap in the market, in the agency ecosystem, in that knowledge base. And the agencies that I worked with in my client side role, most of them were very, there was a genuinely a lack of customer centricity in those conversations, right? So that kind of gave me that like leap of faith, or gave me that in my mind, that extra advantage of like, let me go do this. There is genuinely a gap, and I think I have the right skill set to fulfill this.
So having been a marketer just makes you a more empathetic and a more effective agency. Would that be a fair statement to make?
Well, in some of the services, yes, because from a performance perspective, it's still a very saturated market. But from a CRM perspective, I would say it's a developing market in some sense, and the maturity is relatively low. So in that sense, like being like focusing on CRM for the as a first mover in the region is definitely going to have its advantage.
So is that where you say SellThru will differentiate itself as being one of the early players in the whole MarTech and CRM consulting? And you're doing the full stack servicing, right? So just help us understand this whole offering a little better. What is the scope of work that you pick up on this world?
For sell through, the idea is that firstly, we are positioning ourselves to be the region's first client side agency. And when I say client side agency, what I mean is half of my team, more than half of the team actually comes from client side backgrounds. So there is an inbuilt knowledge, business knowledge that the guys bring to the table, right? Second thing is like when you come from client backgrounds, you're able to look at the client's marketing as a function rather than performance or CRM or SEO individually as a function, right? So in terms of your question regarding the services, so we usually offer the main core services are performance, CRM, marketing automation, and then SEO, right? And then we have a fourth layer, which is data and implementation or data infrastructure, which kind of enables the first three layers. Because again, right, like you work with Web Engage, when clients onboard your technology, implementation is the first big barrier that they want to cross. And getting the right implementation is usually not an easy task, right? When you're especially in the spaces of seed customer engagement platforms, where you need like for app maybe 200 set of events flowing in. Each event has certain like 5 to 7 attributes coming in. Then you have web. Then you have multi-channels being integrated into the customer engagement platforms. So that fourth service which I spoke about, it like we are one of the certified partners with WebEngage for campaign management and integration, because I know like without this implementation as an infrastructure, you can't really execute the campaigns in the future, right? So this needs to be nailed down. So these are the main four services that we operate in today.
Fair enough. So just because you have the client side experience and you've also brought in a whole bunch of people from that ecosystem, do you see a very clear difference in terms of how typical agencies structure their organization in terms of talent vis-a-vis how client organizations do it? And what is your lens on how you've married these two insights to build your org design?
Um, for me, talent is like even when I was hiring before in my previous roles and now, for me, talent is always about like two things. It's like go hire for experience and go hire for attitude, right? Because you cannot replace experience, you cannot replace attitude.
Sure.
And for me, it's always going to be like that. From a structure perspective, fortunately, I've had the experience of working with big traditional agencies. Then I've had the experience of working with performance agencies. And now
Sure.
I'm trying to build something new through client
Mm-hmm.
side agency, right? So I know traditional agencies, you would see like still operate in silos where there is a media planner, there is a separate execution guy, there is a separate data reporting guy, and then there is a key account manager client facing, right? In that space, nobody really knows what's going on 360. And for the client, like especially now with everybody moving towards that performance lens, there is an urge of knowing what's going on now rather
Mm-hmm.
than somebody reaching out to someone and then someone out reaching out back to you with half-baked answers, right?
Sure.
So we got away with that structure in the first place. Now, if you look at traditional performance marketing agencies, they
Hmm.
are focused pretty much on just having either it's divided by search and social. You have search specialist, you have social specialist, or you have like a performance marketer who can manage search and social. For us, the different thing that we're trying to build is like, as we say, we are a client side agency, so we're structured like one.
Okay.
Uh, and like normally, if you look at any big business, they would have their performance team, they would have a CRM team, they would have an SEO team who then work in conjunction with each other. And this is the structure we internally have. And what one thing which differentiates us is like for us as part of the KPI of the team, the growth in the company is linked to the complementary services that you learn, right? So if
Okay.
you go up from account manager to senior account manager to account director, you need to be learning at least one complementary, right? So if you're a performance guy, you need to know of CRM. If you're a CRM guy, you need to know SEO. You can choose and pick, but
Mm-hmm.
complementary knowledge is mandatory.
Sure. Yeah, but that should kind of create a degree of, let's say, choice between width versus depth, because all of these things have their own learning curves and certain level of depth you can achieve. But if you were to step into the next, let's say, peripheral area or the next allied area or the next complementary subject that you put it, you will end up drawing a line somewhere on the depth that you're achieving in one. So how do you balance these two things? That okay, now it's time for me to step out of performance and look at CRM. Well, I probably only covered 50% of what performance has to offer.
Good question. So, like we're still young, right? So that's something to keep in mind. Like we haven't really um, explored the entire spectrum of
Sure.
what the vision is. So it's
Hmm.
something which is still in practice. But I think in a nutshell, you get a sense of working with people on a day-to-day basis. Performance only goes to a point. Nobody can be 100% at everything that they do. But if you are really good at performance, 85 or 87 or 90% doesn't make a difference, right? It's the gist of your conversation and the confidence you have in your accounts.
Sure.
And I feel that's when you are able to kind of decide for the person to get into the next stage. And I think
Hmm.
it's
Hmm.
also, as a startup, one of the philosophies that we have is like it should be 80% data and 20% gut, right? So you can't really have mix of both.
Sure.
And like being fast paced is actually more important to us, getting the timing right, than be like 100% sure about almost every decision we make.
I mean, that's kind of life, right? You're dealing with uncertainties all the time. If you take too long to decide, probably the opportunity is already gone. Awesome. So I think that's a very classic
Correct.
existential career thing as well, right? Where people need to, I mean, there's this term called T-shaped market where you really go deep into something and then you have, let's say, 80% depth on performance, but 20% depth also on a few other things that you need to do. Because when you're sitting on top of a team which is managing those things, and you might not always know the exact specifics of the subject, but you're still in a position to judge whether someone's taking you for a ride, and that I think can be
For sure,
enough
exactly.
to be the leader there, because at least you're not somebody who can be misled, right, in some sense.